So one of the things I think that makes you guys unique is that you are taking a holistic approach to the business and saying, and being honest with people like, hey, you don't have systems, so driving profit's going to be really hard, right? And at the end of the day, that's why people want accountants, right? They want people to help solve their tax problems, help me make sure everything's coming through properly and that I'm actually looking at my numbers correctly. And so you guys come in and help with that, of course, and you help with a lot of other things, but I love the transparency that you give around, you know what, this is great. I'm going to be able to put this on a spreadsheet for you. But if all of your dental hygienists quit and don't want to work for you, good luck making money. You need to go fix this. And then you give them resources and point them in a direction that will be able to help them with that, whether it's marketing or consulting or whatever it may be. And one of the things that makes you unique is you call it your dental momentum journey. I want to kind of work through that and get your guys's thought process on that. And again, I want to remind everybody, you're listening to accountants work through this. They've realized in their own business that they needed this to succeed. And then they realized, oh, every business needs this to succeed. And I've gone through that myself. So can you guys walk me through that? Pretend like I've never heard of it before and kind of share the 6 steps and walk us through how that works and how you tie this together for your clients.
Yeah, I'll jump in. And again, going back to the very beginning of our story, our conversation this is a direct product of how we came through what we would call our entrepreneurial journey. And what we realized is there were so many steps that we just missed the boat on is probably a better way to put it, and so we kind of created this as we've been talking to dentists and trying to understand how they see the world and how they see business. So we created this 6-stage cycle that we would call an entrepreneurial journey. We call it the Ducket Ladd dental momentum journey. And, really the way we look at it is it can start anywhere from day one of D1, and it tends to end when somebody exits their practice or their practices and moves on to the next, right? So way we look at it is the first phase is very simple, and we're trying to answer a simple question, which is practice ownership right for me? Again, this was when I was at a bigger firm trying to decide, is a smaller firm with a more entrepreneurial feel right for me? This is going to be somebody in dental school or somebody who's an associate who's trying to figure out, do I want to own a business? And guess what? It's not right. Gary, you know this. Can be super rewarding, but it can be really tough. And so it's not for everybody. So really phase 1 is trying to build out products and services that help people understand and content that help them understand, is practice ownership right for me? Phase 2 is you're like, I do want it. I know that this is what I want to do. I don't want to be an employee the rest of my life. Yeah.
Real quick. So I love point 1.
Yep.
So what do you do with people at point 1? Right. So if I'm a dental student or I'm thinking about becoming a dental student, point 1's great. But what if I'm a dentist already and I'm already knee deep in this and I don't want business ownership and I already own the business, right? But I love dentistry. How do you point somebody in the right direction in that scenario?
So say that again, Gary. So if they already own a practice.
Yeah. So here's what I bump into. I see sometimes that people love dentistry, but they're not huge fans of the entrepreneur side of it, right? Or they love the entrepreneur side and they're not fans of the dentistry, right? And they find out later after they're already started, right? And so they're already knee deep in it. Do you guys have that come up? Is that something that you guys see or?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that before, exactly. I mean, what you're saying, and that does happen. But I think that the reason that happens is they skip, and that's why we're so passionate about the journey. They skip like the second phase here and the third phase.
Okay.
And they just automatically rush to boom, out of dental school, work a little bit, boom, take down a practices. And they realize they got that entrepreneurial hat on. They're like, oh crap, this sucks.
Got it. Okay.
Or vice versa. Yeah. So I think the answer to that, yeah, we do see it, and we can help coach them backwards a little bit in to make sure what makes the right sense for them. But that's the benefit of the journey, is if they go through the journey in the correct phases, it'll
self-correct, right? If they've already.
Yeah. Not to say that your mindset can't change, but it should self-correct.
And we've seen at all levels. We've seen people who have been practicing for 20 years that just a little stepward back to some foundational concepts. Their heads back in the game and they start rolling, probably similar to what you see on the marketing side. So phase one, we've got to where, yes, we are interested. So phase two is, okay, I do want to own my own practice. This is a step most people skip, in our opinion, at this kind of entry level, is what kind of practice do I want? What do I want to do? Where do I want to be? Who do I want to work with? How big do I want to get? All these kind of things that you could really start trying to vision out what you want in your life and your career. Again, this is where I didn't do this when I went from a bigger firm to a smaller firm. I just said, hey, that's an opportunity. So if I would take in just a few minutes to say, well, if I do this, what do I want to accomplish? And is it going to get me to my life goals? Is it going to help me support my family in a way that creates the balance I want? All those kind of questions that really most people skip over. So that tends to be somebody who's kind of just getting started on trying to figure this thing out. It's practice ownership is right for me. So what kind of practice do I want? So then we move on to phase three. And most people skip straight to phase three. And this is, I've got a practice. Is this the practice? Is this practice right for me? And so we tend to see people come to us a lot that say, hey, here's a practice I got. Can you kind of help me look at it and make sure it makes sense? Some people don't even do that. Some people just sign the dotted line, kind of like you did, Jared, without stopping to ask the right questions. And a big question is it make sense financially? Is this practice going to provide cash flow that's going to support the lifestyle you want to live? And it's just simple, basic questions like that. Are you going to enjoy coming to work here? Is the team built? What are we looking at in this practice individually that makes sense or does not? And again, most people come to us with a preconceived notion. We see it all the time that it doesn't matter what we say. I'm going to buy this one because I like it. I want it. I see it. I like it. I buy it. And then they're miserable. And that's where you kind of see people get stuck, just like you're saying, Gary, where they're frustrated.
What do you think it is with buying a practice that enamors people to make horrible decisions, like to literally put themselves in a position where they're not going to be profitable or they're going to be chained to the office all the time? What causes that?
I think a lot of times they have a scarcity mentality. I think they jump in and think, hey, that's the only practice that I'm going to find. And I'd be interested to see the statistics on how many individuals end up buying the first practice they see. I'm sure it's fairly high, to be honest with you, because it's human tendency, right? You don't want to lose a deal. You don't want to let one get away, but you have to do the due diligence to know that it's fine not to buy that one and have an abundance mentality that, there are other practices out there. And maybe 2 months from now, boom, this dentist over here is going to sell in the exact, and you know what? That one might have been better.
Yeah. There's literally hundreds of thousands of dental offices out there, right? They're everywhere. Yep.
And not to mention too, that a lot of times they have existing relationships with the people selling. They may be an associate in a practice and they like the guy. They say, hey, this is a great guy. I mean, I can't go back to him and negotiate, or I can't go back and tell him I'm not interested. So they just fall in love with it and think that's it. And again, we've seen it where we try to help them analyze it. In our minds, it doesn't make sense, and they still pull the trigger because they want it. And it's kind of like buying a car. Sometimes if you get in your head, psychology kicks in and you pay for it. And then ultimately you may pay more for it later. You know what I mean?
But cars are easy to get out of, right? Like cars are traded back in or, wait a year, but dental practices aren't quite as easy as that. So definitely go through that process. I love this process that you're walking through. So I get phase one, phase two, phase three. Then how do we start to move into phase four?
Okay. So phase 1 through 3, you can look at before practice ownership. Phase 4 and 5 are really where we're trying to help people who own practices. And this is probably one of my biggest mistakes when I started the original firm I was with, is this is very foundational stuff. Is what foundationally do you need to set up as a now new business owner that will set you up for ultimate success, or an optimized practice, or multiple practices, group practice, whatever you want to call it, whatever your goals are? What's going to set you up to get there quickest? And it's almost like, how can we shrink the learning curve to get you to those goals? And so it's simple stuff. This is where, in my mind, where if you don't have any idea of what your purpose in life, your mission, your core values, what you believe in. If you don't have any of this stuff dialed in, then I think that's going to be one of those things that's going to lead to those frustration points that you're talking about. This is as simple as, what kind of financial reporting do I need to look at? What are some of the basic metrics I need to look at to try to make sure that am going to be able to start growing this thing profitably? So it's really kind of getting down to the nuts and the bolts, the day-to-day. How are we going to set this thing up so we can propel ourselves as quickly as possible through this phase 4, which is all foundational concepts, and get into phase 5. Now,
so those are core values, vision, mission, and your processes. Is that right?
Among other things. I mean, that's a sample. Those are some of the things that, again, kind of to your point earlier, you have somebody who comes to us and they've been practicing for 20 years and they're frustrated and they're like, I don't even know if this is right for me. Most of the time, they don't have any of that.
Mm-hmm. And so that's what I was actually going to ask you is, what percentage of dentists that you're talking to just don't have these things when you start talking to them?
High percentage. Again, I keep going back to the bar stool analogies. Phase 4 is building the bar stool or making it stronger. It's how I see it. And a lot of dentists we talk to, they have a very weak bar stool, and they just are starting to run and try to get more profitable. Your bar stool is not good yet.
And then question. So what happens to a business? What's the difference in growth that they'll experience when they have these basic, just the core values, their vision of where they want to go written down, their processes in place of how they want to run their business? How fast do they grow compared to the dentists who have none of those things?
Well, and sometimes if you look at top line growth, it may not be much faster, but we don't care about that as much. We want to know, bottom line, are you taking home more? And see, that's the problem that tends to lead the most frustration. Mm-hmm. And I know you see this with people come to you, say, I just want new patients. And there's a funnel they're going through on the bottom, right? So, what we tend to see is those people have kind of scaled up to an amount, but they're not bringing home any more, and they're frustrated. And they're just working harder to not make, make less, or they may kind of stall out. But if you have the processes in place that really, in my mind, the number one thing it can do is help create systematic accountability for your team. That is what's going to help you grow both the top line and the bottom line in conjunction with each other. That's the kind of stuff that sets you up for multiple practices, group practices, so on and so forth. Those are the kind of things that we, in our experience, that if you don't have those things in place, you are always going to see your numbers get out of whack. You may grow top line a little bit, but your bottom line is going to either grow marginally up, right? or shrink.
Yeah. Yep. That's what I see.
Yeah. You're going to grow, but you're not going to grow profitably, and you're not going to grow comfortably. Right. Meaning you're going to run around like a chicken.
So you're more busy,
you're more stressful.
Yeah. So there's more money, which means more problems. You have way more patients, so you're busier, and that means you're spread thin. And then you start to have culture breaks and things like that because people are overwhelmed. So people leave, and you have turnover, and you're making less money because you're less profitable.
Right.
But yeah, you got more money, more team members, more patients, more problems. That's it. If you don't have the structure in place, it's just going to create problems.
Yeah, that's great. So that's stage 4. So we move from stage 3 to stage 4, and then how do we transition into stage 5?
So stage 4, we hopefully have all of our foundational concepts, and sometimes it's bringing people like you and Gary. Other times that kind of comes later on, but at least you have your systems, processes, your people, all that stuff dialed in. You move on to phase 5, which is how do we help grow profitably? And this is kind of, or how do we create more of an optimized type practice? And so this is where we historically have always loved serving our clients, because to me, this is the fun stuff. This is where we say, we don't have to go back and bash our heads against the wall because your culture's terrible and your people are leaving all the time. We don't have to mess with that. We've got a lot of stuff, good things in place. So now what are the levers that we can pull? You got good process in place. How can we get you in front of Gary and his team so they can actually create manageable growth that makes sense? How can we find ways to take you from a one practice owner to bring on a partner in a way that is mutually beneficial, that makes sense? How can we take you from one practice to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, so on and so forth? This is where, when we look at advisory and what we, at least me, I'm more passionate about this than probably anything else, is how do we help people grow profitably to scale in a way that makes sense and hits their strategic objectives. That's really how we look at phase 5.
Got it.
Yeah, well, it really allows us to live out our mission really through there. You know what I'm saying? Strive every day to make the lives of our team members, clients better. That phase 5 service adds so much value to that client. They're going to get better, achieve their goals, and that's really truly what fires us up.
Awesome. Yes, and that's and honestly, when people get all aligned together and everybody's pulling in the same direction, it really is magical. Not just within the business, but with everybody else, the patients, the firms that they're working with, everything starts to click. And then phase 6. A lot of people don't talk about this, but I know that this is something that you help with clients as well.
Yeah, so we're at phase 5, and let's say it doesn't matter. They could be a single practice, they could have a group practice, whatever the case is, but they're now ready to step away either from the chair or from the desk as a CEO, and they're ready to move on to next. And that's the beautiful thing about being an accountant that's also an advisor is that we can kind of follow somebody and build out ways that we can work together all the way through to the end. And that tends to be more of okay, we set ourselves up well, we've got an exit. Let's make sure the exit's done well, that it's done in a tax efficient way, that we've done everything we can to keep as much money in your pocket. Now you've got this money. What do you want to do with it? Do we want to go out? Do we want to start investing in real estate? What do we want to do to try to maintain our lifestyle? How can we help you make the best decisions you can so that you can start creating your legacy at that point? And we tend to see, again, this is obviously a little bit more of a tax-driven model, but that's the beautiful thing about being a CPA is that, we can kind of stick with somebody theoretically all the way from D1, day one of D1 all the way to the end where we're actually helping them in their retirement. And to us, that's kind of a very fulfilling way to plug in.
That's great. It's the full cycle. And thank you so much for walking us through that. I know it takes a little bit of time, but I think that's what sets you guys apart from a lot of other individuals out there. And so a lot of value there.